Welcome to Inside West Point, Ideas That Impact. I'm Brigadier General Shane Reeves, the Dean of the United States Military Academy at West Point. Through a series of discussions, we will show you a different side of West Point, where we will make even our most complex initiatives accessible to broad audiences, and give you an inside view to our cross-disciplinary work, which is being applied throughout the world. This episode of Inside West Point features a longtime inspiration to so many here at West Point and beyond, the men's lacrosse coach, Coach Alberici. Welcome, Coach.
Thank you for having me, sir.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. Humor me for a minute as I read a short segment of your bio. So Joe Alberici enters his 20th season as head coach of the Army lacrosse program, boasting a record of 172 and 111. Following the footsteps of legends like Jack Emmer and Ace Adams, Alberici has made significant strides since taking the helm in 2006. A former assistant to Emmer, he returned to West Point after 9 successful seasons at Duke, where he helped elevate the program to national prominence. In 2024, Alberici led the Black Knights to an impressive 11-3 season, including a historic first-ever #1 national ranking for Army. His leadership has earned him multiple Patriot League Coach of the Year honors. The 2023 season was particularly notable, with the Black Knights achieving a 9-game win streak and capturing the Patriot League tournament title. In the NCAA tournament, they made a significant run, upsetting the defending champion Maryland to reach the quarterfinals for the first time since 2010. Academically, Alberici emphasizes excellence both on the field and in the classroom. He has coached 142 players named to the Patriot League honor roll, 46 All-Americans, 14 academic All-Americans, and 6 Patriot League School Athletes of the Year. Tell me a little bit about that 2023 run in the NCAA tournament, especially knocking off Maryland.
It was a memorable season for really what they all overcame. So we had a very successful 22 year, had graduated in an enormous senior class, including Brendan Nichtern, who was a finalist for the Tewaaraton Award, the Heisman Trophy, Final Five guy. So not a lot was expected of them. And we really adopted the mantra right out of that season. It was a Bill Russell quote that I brought to him, and Bill Russell had a saying that if a man pays you $5, give him $7 worth of work. And we really wanted to over-deliver that season because we had some talented players that maybe just not a lot of people knew about it in the lacrosse world. Yeah. So what they overcame, it started with our captain, one of the great leaders I've ever coached here, Quinn Binney, tore his ACL in a winter practice, and then went down. Jackson Eicher, who tore his ACL in our second to last scrimmage, and he was going to be a key component. So these are young men who had pivotal pieces in our program. So already we were starting with a newer nucleus, and then some of these key cogs we were losing. But the team really continued to come together. A book that we read that year was very appropriate. It was The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. So that was the book that we had chosen back in December before we had all of these obstacles in front of us. The guys that were stepping up in different ways, freshmen stepping forward, seniors just playing at a level that they hadn't previously done, just really made it a remarkable year in so many ways, and winning the Patriot League crown, and then the belief that they had in themselves going into playing Maryland. Maryland was the defending national champion, had been undefeated in 2022, a staple in the Final Four, and to go down to their field and play a great game. But I can tell you this, it wasn't what we hadn't seen all year. Yeah. It just kind of went out on the national front a little bit more.
It's excited to hear that there were players that had a chance to, when it was time to perform, they were able to. There was some unfortunate occurrences that happened to some other of the leaders on the team, and it gave an opportunity for some to play and perform, and they did. Great testament.
And in that game itself, we had 5 players, the Maryland game that is, we had 5 players score goals who had spent time on the scout team that season.
Wow.
It was one of those ones that created lifetime memories for those young men, and a great deal, a lifetime of coaching points that I'll be able to make to future teams.
Do you all pick a book every year?
We do. This is more recent. Last 4 or so years that we've done it. So in 2023, it was Ryan Holiday's The Obstacle is the Way. And 24 was a book by Jay Billis called Toughness, and what that's all about. And then this year we're reading Legacy, a book around the All Blacks.
Yeah.
We'll have what we call FTT dinners, family toughness tradition. Those are core values, and we'll after practice we'll go through a chapter or two every other week, and the players will lead it, and they'll come up with their own questions. And it's just another one of those formal ways that we continue to build the team, and I think there's positive effects to that for them in a lifetime and what they're going to do in the military, and obviously there's some immediate positive effects to what they're going to do on the field on Saturdays.
That's fantastic to hear. And I should state, many will be thinking, why is the dean and the lacrosse coach on the podcast talking to each other, and what brings us together? The one thing I always highlight to anyone who knows anything about West Point is that the whole place is one team. It doesn't matter where you reside at West Point. We're all focused on the same thing, which is preparing our cadets to be able to walk out into the Army to not just lead America's sons and daughters, but also to fight and win our nation's wars. But let me put you on the spot. What makes what you do so relevant to the development of our cadets?
We have this opportunity to be impactful. I feel like that what I know of the military and running, your platoon and running your company is very similar to how we run a team. I've always felt like West Point, and I'll explain to recruits, athletics is not an extracurricular activity here at West Point. It's part of the curriculum. It's part of what you do. It's part of helping to develop you as a leader, and kind of look at our time up at Mikey Stadium and the Foley Anders Nathy Center as a leadership laboratory,
right,
and an opportunity for accelerated growth because of the desire and want to be part of that.
How often do you hear from previous players about how directly connected their experiences on the lacrosse team are to how they approach leading in the Army?
It's one of the real blessings that I've had because of time is just to continue to have these relationships with so many who've graduated and have gone on to do great things in the Army. One of the ones that just jumps to mind is it's custom for me to call the guy once he graduates from Ranger School, and I'll ask him how was it, and I have been hit with the same response by every one of them, and it's Coach, there wasn't one day in Ranger School that was tougher than a January day in Nike. And I take a great deal of pride in that we're just on that level, and it's when I hear from former players, and they'll ask me, Coach, can you send me, the 12 things that take no talent? Can you send me, our mission statement? Those are the sort of things that they're using, they're working, and they're being part of and utilizing it, with their companies. And I do think what they take away more than anything else is the feel. Is the feel that you have in the program, whether you are the first team All-American or whether you are the last guy on the bench, the feel that you have and the connectedness to us, as well as you're part of helping us be victorious.
I like how you described, when you say you talk to a recruit, it's not, hey, you're coming to play a sport. It's part of the curriculum here. And that has been such an integral part of the West Point experience for at least since Douglas MacArthur was the superintendent from 1919 to 1922, and probably before that. But really this idea that a big part of being an officer is not just having the physical ability to lead, but also some of the skill sets that come from competing. In my mind, I always think, hey, if you can perform under high stress and as a Division I athlete, or in a competitive club, or on the intramural field against another cadet who's very competitive, and you can perform a task under immense pressure, that translates very well to being able to lead under different types of pressures at different times.
Yeah, it's the great quote.
Yeah.
On the fields of friendly strife are sown the seeds that on other days, on other fields will bear the fruits of victory. And, I truly believe that.
Let me back up a little bit here and talk about your background and what got you to where you are today. So you really started teaching and coaching young people. So what about those early days inspired you to want to dedicate your life to coaching young people?
It started with both my parents were educators. So my dad was a high school history teacher and a longtime football coach, just a legendary coach in the central New York area. And my mom was also an educator, taught in high school and home economics it was at that time, but the parenting and all kinds of things that it morphed into over time. So I could see the rewards that they had. And they weren't monetary, but they were just rewards and relationships and the incredible life that they both have, or that my mom's still living with us today, still has because of the relationships and the people that they've taught. And so that's probably where it started. And so when I went to school, education was what I wanted to do, and I felt as though if I could teach at the younger levels, I was elementary ed, and then I wanted to coach football like my dad and coach lacrosse, and I thought that I'd always be surrounded by inspired people.
You mentioned your family and your dad's coaching. The things that you saw in him is what you want out of coaching also. What are some of those things that you saw?
My dad was through the 60s, 70s, and 80s into the 90s. So, his influence was Vince Lombardi, was that, and, just demanding a lot from him. But what I saw, which was amazing, is he coached in a very small town, the consistency that he was able to deliver, the excellence that he had in his passing a year and a half ago. It just came up so many times. He had a saying that he would always yell out before practice, "Another day in which to excel." And to see how that stuck with so many of his former players and his students at his wake that was 7 hours long.
7 hours.
The number of young ladies that were coming up, well, they're 75 years old now.
Yeah, right.
But, I had your dad as a teacher, in 1972. And he was always the kindest to me. So he just had a great ability to be really tough and to have a very soft side to him. He had a great combination of all of those things. But, just one of the really awesome things about education and coaching and education are together side by side. It's the same thing. It's the same thing is you just have no idea where the influence ends. It just can go forever, because what you're saying in a classroom to a young person is something that they're going to say to their platoon, and then those people are going to say it to their families, and it all starts out of that classroom. And I've just loved that about education, just that ability to potentially, if done well, influence not only those who are around you, but future generations.
I think that's
the ripple effect of it all.
What a great story, because that's impact. That is true impact, generational impact amongst people, and it's a great reason to want to get into being a coach or being an educator or being a leader of some kind in a impactful way. I think about yours when I think about that 20 years at West Point. Similarly, how many young officers you've touched that are no longer young officers, now they're becoming senior officers, and the impact in the Army and how that's permeated what you've said in the locker room or what you've said on the field and how that's stuck in their head. Obviously, family's a big deal to you, which is great. But congratulations, you're going to be a West Point parent. Yes. So that's a whole different dynamic. Oh, yeah. Here you go. It's a whole different. My son graduated last year, and that's a whole different deal. Being a West Point parent, different anxieties and stresses.
Question.
But so your daughter's going to come and play lacrosse.
That's correct. Yeah.
So that's exciting.
Yeah, I'm very excited for her, as we are as a family. Isabella was recruited by Michelle Tumlo, who I just love, and couldn't think of a better person for her to have as a coach, and her coaching staff, just terrific. I really stayed out of it though when it was coming down to decision time, and there were some other opportunities in other places that she needed to let know, and Petra, my wife, was like, "When are you going to talk to her?" I'm like, "I'm not talking to her. If she wants to talk to me, I will talk to her about it. But I don't want to be on the hook. I don't want to be on the hook when things are bad, No, but it was pretty special. I still remember when she told me she was coming, and she talked about, it was right around the passing of my father, and I'll try to get through this without getting choked up, but my dad was like her biggest fan. He had 17 grandchildren, so he was all 17 grandchildren's biggest fan. But he certainly had a great relationship with Isabella, and would love to hear her stories about lacrosse, and always finish it up with "You're the best, you're the best." It's just So we Isabella and I would always kid that my dad was her biggest hype man. Right? Grandpa's the biggest hype man. He biggest hype man. So in his passing. She was reflective, and she said to me that, when I talked about all of the schools that I visited and all, Grandpa was always very excited, for me, and he would be excited for wherever I went. He goes, but there was always a little something about West Point. And she just said to me, she goes, got me thinking about what I would be most proud of. And of all the schools that I'm looking at, West Point would be the place that I'm most proud of graduating from. So, she's coming for the right reasons. We're all crossing our fingers, as we all do, and we think it's a good fit. We'll find out, but I do think she has a lot of characteristics to be excellent here, and I hope she realizes them while she's here, because she's certainly going to be surrounded by excellence everywhere she goes. So. That's been very aspirational for both of my children. We've had such a unique run personally, living on post for 20 years has been an incredible blessing. And the people that both Peter and I get to come into contact with and call friends, but also who they get to call friends, is really an amazing, it's been an amazing journey.
Well, I'm excited. Thank you for supporting her and encouraging her to serve.
We'll see what you're saying in another year.
I will not. I will not take it easy on her. Don't worry. When you were working here in the mid '90s, lacrosse was a little bit different. It wasn't as year round, and so you would do other things at the academy. So you had an opportunity to work in the Center for Enhanced Performance, which has really grew out of the mid '80s, and there was an institution here also, Dr. Z, who you got to work with. So how did that experience help you do the things that you do today as the head coach?
Yeah, what an incredible blessing that was to be with Doc Z. So at that time, sir, it was an NCAA rule. They had what was called restricted earnings coaches. So what West Point did is they provided an avenue to work other jobs. So that would have been 1995. And at the time, I believe the only place in the country that had a Center for Enhanced Performance or sports psychology lab was West Point. So I went in there as a trainer, and it was kind of a dual benefit. Certainly, it was going to help me and advance as a coach in terms of just knowledge base, but also what we would be able to do is we were directly connected to a team where we could bring some of those athletes in, because sports psychology was at a very new, it's still a young, a young discipline, and just an opportunity to kind of work side by side with Dr. Zinzer was really a gift that I couldn't have gotten anywhere else.
Do you think that you learned the importance of mental preparation and mental resilience and all the things that come along with the connection to the physical performance in that job?
Yeah. He would start every time he would address a group, and Doc Z would say, "How much of your performance is mental?" And you'd get different things: 50%, 80%, 90%. And then he'd say, "Well, why don't you spend 90% of your time training your mind?" if it's 90% of your performance? And, kids never really had an answer for that. I still don't have that
Yeah,
answer,
sure.
but it really drew the connection. Like, everybody seems to understand that your mental state has a lot to do with your performance, but spend very little time working on it and training it. So that sort of connection for me, positive, effective thinking, goal setting, and then that spills right into time management. Resiliency training is probably a term that has been coined the last 6-8 years, but that's what they were doing in 1995.
Yeah.
Is resiliency training. So it made for crazy times that I kind of look back and say, wow, I don't think I could do those exact hours again and how it worked, but it really was something that had a profound effect on how I coach still to today. When I came back as the head coach, Doc Z always had a seat at the table. Like our first meeting that I've mentioned a couple times to you, the only other person to speak other than myself was Doc Z, and I always gave him a couple of minutes to communicate to the guys that he's there. Certainly, when it became to deeper levels and more professionals were involved as they have now, it's all professionals over there. And sports psychologists and so now I've been able to I've known firsthand what you can do, so I'm able to direct them to it. And Dr. Matt Gonzalez is now working with our team, and he does a wonderful job with so many of our guys.
I was just thinking as you were talking how that's a great example of how having Division I sports at West Point resulted in institutional positive change, because so many Center for Enhanced Performance really grew out of trying to mentally prepare athletes, but that has translated to that is now available to all cadets.
Correct.
There's so much of the sports psychology approach to preparing athletes is now being applied to preparing cadets. Again, whether it's positive thinking or it's goal setting or all of those different things, and how that has grown into this expansive methodology to developing cadets to be the leaders that we expect them to be. So
and it's out in the Army,
yeah,
because it's with any elite fighting force, they'll have a sports psychologist working with them, or helping them come together as a team.
So you were all in, and even at that very early stage, I'm assuming you had to have learned that from your parents.
Well, my parents. It's funny. I didn't know it at the time, but I love little quotes, and a quote that just fits my parents so well is I believe it's Saint Francis, and he said that you should preach the gospel every day, and when necessary, use words. And that was my parents. Certainly not short on advice and all, but it was really how they lived and continue. My mom continues to live her life in a way that's serving others and invested in relationships. And they have more friends than anybody can count because of who they are as people.
I mean, it's such an important part of leadership, presence and lead by example. People are very quick to recognize hypocrisy, I think. And what you just stated, that's actually such an important part of what we want to develop in cadets, which is they need to show up, and they need to lead just by how they live their lives. So that's a great lesson.
Our first pillar in our culture is unrelenting towards excellence, and right underneath that, it's in relationships. Unrelenting towards excellence in relationships, because you can be excellent in relationships, and when you're putting others first, when you're waking up in the morning and you're wondering how you can help others, and then you're not just thinking about it, you're putting action to it, now you're going to be excellent in relationships, and that's a big emphasis in what we do, along with our second pillar, being a man for others, and being accountable, being the third pillar. So when you do that, I think it gives you a tremendous foundation to be an excellent leader.
I think pragmatically also, when you're externally focused on others, it helps build resilience. It helps you be able to do difficult things. It is definitely a trait that we like in our Army officers, that selflessness, focus on others, what you said, that relentless drive towards excellence, all those things, again, resonate outside of just Army lacrosse, but those are things that the Academy tries to embody in our graduates, and of course the Army.
A lot of times I get asked, boy, how tough is it to coach at West Point? And certainly we've got our obstacles, but every program does, and every school does. But one of what I see is one of the great advantages is when I'm talking to our young men around selflessness, about being part of something bigger than yourself, about hard work and enduring. Here, I get a great advantage because their instructors are talking to them about that. Their TACs are talking to them about those same sort of things. Maybe not in the exact language that I'm using. That to me becomes a decided advantage for us because I'm not the only voice. This is what they're hearing from everybody, and that just makes my job easier.
You have coached a number of All-Americans, but also a number of academic All-Americans, and you said one of the things you really focus on is relentless excellence, and you've done an exceptional job with the lacrosse team in terms of collectively how they perform as a team academically. They do very, very well, and also at the individual level. So how do you emphasize academics on the lacrosse team?
So if you were to come to our first meeting in August, usually lasts a little over an hour. And if it went 70 minutes, it wouldn't be until the last 10 minutes that you would hear me talk about lacrosse. It's about getting all of the other things in order. Now, I guess this is my 20th season, so it will be the 40th semester in a row that I've sent out a letter to every instructor who has a lacrosse player in it, and just letting them know, the line in it is simply, I just want to let you know you have a cadet lacrosse player in your classroom, and I'm here for assistance to help them reach their greatest potential in the classroom. I have my number with them, so I'm just, again, trying to show my players that it isn't just about lacrosse. I'm not just about lacrosse. I'm about developing you fully. I've had great rapport with the teachers. Our players will come in, the freshman class. I bring them all in. And it's a yearly thing. I'll look around the group and there's probably 20 of them, and I'll say, you're all good students. There is, I think, one player in here that could get through this place without any assistance. And if you are asking yourself, am I the guy he's talking about? You're not him. You better know it. You better know it. So just really getting them to reach out to one another. Also in that initial meeting, I will have our players stand up and at one point, typically the older guys, and show how, or let everybody know how they can assist. So Mark Schroeder will get up, and I'm a nuclear engineer, guys. I run regular tutoring sessions in physics for it, and the next guy will get up and, hey, I'm a history major. I'm a good writer, send me your papers and I'll do the editing, so it's a group effort. It's a group effort, and that's something that has helped develop, a strong academic culture. And now it's not just my voice that's talking about the importance of it. It's all of the guys, and it benefits us on the field. Okay. So, one of the things that I'm constantly trying to speak to our guys, when somebody's making things hard on you, it's really important that you don't make them the enemy. So academics is really hard, and it's really hard for a lot of our guys. 60% of our guys come through the prep school, but it's really important for us to not make, the dean the enemy, not to make the comm the enemy. Because if we're spending our time trying to fight battles within our institution, how in the heck are we going to beat the teams on the outside? So just doing a good job, a great job, strive towards excellence. If you can give 100% on the field, why can't you give 100% in the classroom? It's a pretty simple thing. So, our overall arching, is to develop a West Point man. And in my eyes, a West Point man is somebody who gives 100% 100% of the time. 110% doesn't exist. You can only give what you can give, but the very best are the ones that can give 100% to everything that they do. So that's in your academic life, that's in your social life, that's when we talk about when you go home, being present for mom and dad and for grandma and grandpa and answering all the questions. That's giving 100%. And it's all within us, I think is all about is helping you become as great as you can be.
It's got to be really fulfilling for you to watch the maturation of a plebe till when they become a firstie. I mean, it is for me when I so many cadets I have seen where I'm like, I cannot believe that is the same kid I knew 4 years ago.
It's amazing how they have been shaped, and the reasons for them coming are much different from the reasons for why they stay.
Yeah.
And coming, it's typically pretty singular. And what West Point can do for them, and by the time this place has wrapped their arms around them, and our program has wrapped our arms around them, it's what you can do for this place. It's what you can do for the Army. And it has that's a pretty cool evolution to witness.
There's been so many changes in Division I sports in general. It seems to me that it's there isn't a season any longer. It's year round. That there's a higher level of not talent but proficiency in the Division I sport athlete. Is that true? And have you felt that? Have you watched this almost, I wouldn't say a professionalization of the amateur sports, but there is an increasingly more professional feel to amateur sports?
Without question, certainly in our sport, as it has evolved in terms of just the access to the sport at a younger age. So it's been about a decade or maybe even two where lacrosse is the fastest growing sport at the youth level. So it has just continued to grow. So opportunities, once only for the young men on Long Island or in Baltimore and upstate New York, you'll have them in Alabama and Missouri and, and all across the board.
Which probably makes recruiting a lot harder for you.
Well, better. Actually,
Okay.
So with some issues, the Division I lacrosse landscape has probably doubled in size, but it still hasn't matched the growth of the game.
Right.
So there's a lot of great players out there. The guys that I've coached, and one of the things that we hang our hat on, part of our core values is toughness, and Army lacrosse players have been some tough dudes. What I find from our guys over the last half decade is the all in. So what I mean by that is they're much more schooled on nutrition, and the athletic department has made an incredible investment in nutrition. Our guys, I would tell you that 80% of our players are in bed by 10 o'clock every night. So what that means now is the work load is still the same, is what you're doing on the weekends.
Sure.
And how our guys have attacked academics in those down periods. But in the end, what it makes is less down periods. The ability to go into a training room and do your prehab, the time you have to spend afterwards in your rehab. It's just a lot. It's a lot, but there's clearly a love for it with our Army lacrosse guys.
So in my mind, a typical day for you would be 3 or 4 hours in front of a chalkboard drawing up plays, and then walking around with a whistle, blowing it, and maybe screaming a little bit and throwing clipboards. But that's probably wrong. So what is a typical day for you?
So recruiting is never far from it. So we're always talking recruiting in our staff meetings. So typical will be that morning hours are mine, and I spend that with some type of workout in the morning. It gets going about 5:30, and then I'd like to be in the office around 8. And my staff and I get together at 9:15. We'll start with logistics and things that just have to be done with our director of operations, our equipment, our director of equipment, and then they're excused, and then we'll talk recruiting, and then we'll talk around last week, the night before's practice. So oftentimes we'll watch some of that practice together. Most of the time, the coaching staff will do that, have done that the night before. We'll work through a practice that has been I'll spare you all the details of it, but it's about it is the fourth time that we're going through that single day's practice.
Wow.
Is that morning, and then I'll put that to paper, and now we'll turn our focus individually to our opponent and in the different aspects of the game that my assistants cover, and then we will convene again at 1:30, where we get together and go through the practice one more time. So having the young men in your office, or meeting them over in the locker room to go through their clips and film and whatever needs to be taken care of. So we'll practice. Our film sessions begin at 3:40. We're typically out on the field about 6:15, and sir, we're going to get 2 good hours of practice. Sometimes that takes 3 hours to get those 2 good hours, but we'll spend a couple hours on the field, and then that's followed up with weight room training, some additional meetings, and then for myself and my staff, we'll go home and grab something quick to eat, and then it's just to our iPads and
Wow.
watching practice or our scouting reports and preparation for our next opponent.
When I think about the cadet athletes that you recruit, I would assume that most of them, or all of them, have been highly successful in high school and have had great success, so they wouldn't be on the radar and be recruited by West Point. What are some of the things that you do to teach resilience, or how to overcome failure or disappointment, and help them work through a challenge like that?
I am so proud of this group, and it's not anything that I've done, but our senior class this year is 22 players, of which we have yet to lose a player. I think that it really speaks to the culture of the program.
Sure, yeah.
But in terms of resiliency, I really lean heavy into our upperclassmen to share their story, share your story, and they are heavily involved with our plebes, and just making sure that there's nothing that plebe has seen that hasn't been seen before, and
right.
hey, you're not alone in this. You're not alone in this. And the message I'm sending to our guys is, toughness is a part of who we are and what we're about, but there isn't a person on earth that's tough all the time. And then that's when the team steps up. That's when everybody else has to get around that young man that maybe is experiencing, some hard times and isn't as tough as they want to be.
Right.
So, I believe it starts there, and then it just gets passed down. It gets passed down, and we have some saying that I won't say on air around, our resiliency is that, I talk about our first opponent for the last 15 years is UMass, University of Massachusetts. And as we're going through some tough times, I'll always say, UMass doesn't care. So you have your opponents, you have the people that you're playing against that you as a lacrosse player are going to size yourself up against. They don't care. So you can't. What I'm saying? So we don't have time to feel sorry for ourselves, because our opponents do not feel sorry for ourselves. West Pointers, young men, young women at this institution are world class at pedaling uphill. There's obstacles in front of them, and they have found ways to continue to progress and to get better from them all. Where I find that I have to do as much or more coaching is getting them to pedal downhill. So when things are good, let's pick up speed, because there's another mountain that's ahead of us. Let's not be fooling ourselves. So if we're coasting down that hill, we don't have the momentum to take us up through the next one. The hardest thing to do in sports is to learn from winning. Because when you lose, you really look deeply into yourself and what you did, and every little play is under the microscope. When you win, you sometimes can have a tendency to have less self-reflection and say, hey, it was all great because the score turned out the way it should, and not look at the components or the pieces that we need to do better for the next challenge. So really that idea of pedal, pushing and using the group to help us push up the hill, but not stepping away when it's downhill. Continue to push them.
A discussion about pedaling uphill, and also you put that in combination with the closeness of the team and how, as you mentioned, the firsties now, all 22 of them came from prep school up till now. That shows a great level of cohesion and an ability to work collectively to overcome a challenge. We would call that the warrior ethos. What would you, when I say the warrior ethos, what do you think about?
I think about young people who are committed to something, committed to whatever it is, a warrior ethos, and probably more than anything is they're committed to one another, committed to the mission, but committed to one another, and making certain that you're there for them in the best of times and in the worst of times. And, that's how I would look at that warrior ethos.
Oftentimes when people don't have that type of cohesion or that type of ethos, they disintegrate as a group in the face of a challenge. And that is one of the things, as you were speaking, I was like, this is really an interesting parallel to me on how Army lacrosse builds that amongst these young men. When they go into the Army, they have at least a model on how to do the same thing that's necessary to, when you're facing the greatest challenge that humans do to each other, which is warfare, how you can build that cohesion and be able to overcome those challenges in the face of extreme danger and fear.
Yeah, it's really, I think a part of it is making it important. And one of the ways you make it important is celebrate the times that you do. It was just this week after practice, just a way of reinforcing our culture. I have them all in there. They're all in their helmets. We hadn't finished yet, and I'll have a couple words. And every so often, I'll ask them a question. And the question was, guys, tell me a story of somebody in this huddle being a man for others, because that's one of our pillars of our culture. And it's incredible what these guys do for each other. Hey, coach, I was a half an hour earlier. I needed help on my CY 105, and Christian Mazer stayed with me and worked with me for an hour and a half. And I had only asked him a half an hour earlier on the day of the week, so it's really ranges heavily into the academics and how they're supporting each other. But then, one of them came out, Alec Vaccaro, who's been injured for a good portion. He's a face-off guy. And hey, coach, I watched Alec Vaccaro. He was watching film for over an hour on the opponent's face-off guy, even though he's not playing this week because he's injured, just so that he can go to the face-off room and be a presence. We have a retreat that we go up to Mirror Lake, not the nice Mirror Lake up in Lake Placid, just an hour away, and you're of a certain age, so you would know what The Shining looks like.
Sure,
yeah, that's us. We're like in a summer retreat in the middle of winter, and it's incredible what comes out of that, and we really work on our culture there. One of the things that sticks out to me is Christian Fournier, who's should be hearing here in the next month or so on what medical school he's going to go into. And Christian was talking about his academic habits, and what he does is he plans everything to the left one day. And the reasoning for that is, I want to be there for you guys when you need me. So if I've done everything in advance, I can always be there to help, and it's what's kept me here for 20 years. There's so many like that. My favorite of all time is John LaMonica. It was December of his senior year, and he had finished up early, maybe Tuesday. I don't know the exact days, but let's just say the exam week was Monday through Saturday, and it was a Tuesday, and he had finished up, and he's a Long Island guy. And again, he's in his first year, and he stops by the office on his way out and just talking and everything. And I said, what are you doing? Well, he goes, I'm coming back in 2 days. I'm like, what are you doing coming back? He goes, well, the CY test is on Friday, and I'm giving one last tutoring session. It just runs that deep within our program that to be a man for others. And again, I feel like it's just charmed. It's just charmed, and it's what right looks like, and it's made these 20 years incredibly rewarding.
What did you learn at your 9 years at Duke?
Well, I'd been an assistant here for 2 years, and I got the opportunity to go work for Mike Pressler down there as an assistant. I spent 9 years. I was never wrong one time. I never was wrong one time. Because if the decision was right, I was like, that's what I was telling coach. And if the decision was wrong, I was like, I was telling him something different. So you go from a suggestion maker to the decision maker.
Yeah.
But a lot in how coach ran the program. The discipline in and around the program, how you approach the practice session were all things that were left a lasting impression on me. Coach Emmer in his organization and in the professional manner in which he handled himself for his whole 36 years as a head coach and his 22 years here just left an amazing impression on me. I was fortunate to play for a guy by the name of Al Brown at Alfred University, and I was able to learn what by making it fun, people will do hard things. Yeah. And it is something I really admire about you. And I just, when I look at your leadership style, there is just a lot that's very difficult here academically, and you do your best to make it enjoyable and fun, and that is, when you're having fun and doing something, you're typically going to do it better, or you're going to give greater effort to it, and that's just something that from afar that I've just noticed in your style, and it's been impressive to me.
Well, thanks, Coach. I mean, it's first off, it's a huge honor to even have this job, and I'm always humbled to be here with same reasons you mentioned, the people from cadets and to coaches, staff, and faculty, but it is fun. How many other schools exist where a student apologizes for a bad grade? You're like, yeah, you should try harder, right? So let me go back to, you mentioned right now the book's Legacy that you all are working on, are reading through. Great book. When I think about legacy, though, especially about Army Lacrosse, it has an amazing history at the academy. I know you know him. He's a friend of mine, Professor Mark Wellman, who has traced the lineage of the numbers of the players. And when you see that, it is shocking, the number of generals to prisoners of war to Medal of Honor winner. I mean, you name it. The Army Lacrosse has captured the experience of West Point. How does that legacy inform the team today?
Sure. So, in our culture, again, statement right at the bottom of it, it says, never cheat the bloodlines. And it's just not only the great players that have come before you in 108 years of history, but it's more importantly, the great men. And at every opportunity, try to bring those men in front of our guys, just to say hello, say a couple words in the huddle. I want them to know them. There's more formal things like alumni weekend, and but I want them to get to know them. And Mark Wellman, as you had mentioned, had been a longtime friend of mine, going back to when I was an assistant here. Just really one of the great people you'd ever want to meet. One of the most generous people with his time, and he just amazing man. And Mark did a 10-year, it took him 10 years, but he went back through every yearbook, everything that he could find that had Army Lacrosse, and some of that just there wasn't a great storytelling with the history, and he traced the lineage of the number. So each fall, when our players have their number, they'll have a booklet given to them with every person who's ever worn that jersey, and what their lacrosse accomplishments were, if there were any, but also who they were as an officer. And what that's led to is most of our guys now have some sort of text chain or email chain with players who've worn their number. And it's just incredible. You got guys from 1950s on the email hammering it out like, hey, beat Rutgers this week. To our guys, but it's inspiring. And my message to our guys is, the greatest way to honor the tradition is to build upon it. And our guys take that incredibly seriously, and it means so much to them. And it's where I've had to do what I've had to do is I've had to coach the alumni quite a bit, because they're thinking back to when people had come to talk to them, and they have this impression that the young people don't want to hear from them, and our guys love it.
Yeah.
They just love it. And I have to coach the alums, like saying, no, come in here, and they want to hear from you. They want to hear your message. So, we have that, and I try to tie it in a lot of different ways. We probably have a dozen or so drills that we do in practice that I've named for players. And just whether it's Bach Unsettled for Justin Bachmeyer in '08, or it goes on. JB passing, John Burke, 2014. I could go on a whole long. DK passing, Danny Kobasa, captain of the 22 team. So they have that drill, so they know how much it means to me, and it really is something that I wanted from coaching. Is I wanted those relationships. I saw what that. For my dad, what that had been, and a high school scale, like the number of people who would come up to me. I played for your dad, and so I've always wanted that part of it out of coaching. So it's been very easy for me for 20 years. But then what's been great is the 2 years that I spent here in '95 and '96. All of those. Guys I'm connected to, and then there was a group that I recruited or helped recruit that were in the late '90s, early 2000s. But really, I kind of always felt that because of that, it was so important to me that I would have those relationships. But really, one of the blessings I couldn't have seen was the relationships that I have with so many that I never coached.
But they're connected to the bigger Lacrosse family. Yeah.
They're just such great human beings, and I've never had an alum ever tell me about what we should be running or what's it's just never been that way. They've always been so incredibly helpful in any way, and have been such an enrichment to our program. It's hard to even, quantify, because they have just what they've meant to me and what they have meant to the players is just, an incredible wind behind our sails.
The happiest I think I've ever seen a human being is Professor Mark Wellman, because my grandfather graduated in 1939. He had a scrapbook, and Mark was looking for all of the lacrosse programs, and so I had the one from 1938 with all the players and the numbers, so I just put it on his desk one day. I think that may have been peak. May have been peak for Mark on that day.
I don't doubt you.
I was like, here you go, you'll be much happier. Like, you deserve this. You need this in your life. Okay, so I like to wrap up with a few rapid fire questions.
I'll do my best.
You just say what first thing that comes to your mind. You ready? What is your most prized possession?
I'd say my wedding ring.
Okay. What is your favorite sport that's not lacrosse?
I love basketball.
Basketball.
And still play full field or full court games to 100. And I'm about 35 years older than everybody I play with, but I'm still going.
What's your favorite book?
It took me all summer long, but I read a biography on Grant. Mm. And it took me it's the longest book I've ever read, sir. I'm very proud of that. 700 pages or whatever it was. And I just was blown away with the resiliency. And I love those type of books, those real life stories, because I always put it down and go, Joe, you can never feel sorry for yourself. and it's just such a great message, and just that continual, he was down and out and came back and earned everything he got.
What is your favorite workout?
I like to compete, so it's that basketball, or I also play hockey a couple times in the morning. So I love it here at West Point because you can always get a game at 6 a.m. Yeah. And so I still I enjoy competing probably more than working out.
What's the hardest class you ever had to take?
I would say probably macroeconomics class that I took. That was few concepts that were a little above me.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
best advice I've ever received probably was from my dad. And it's great leadership advice too. And he would always say, Joe, if you don't believe in yourself, who's going to? So just that self-belief, even in those tougher times, that you've got what it takes to get the job done. That's probably stuck with me the most.
That's a good one. So thanks, Coach, for taking the time to be with us. This has been a blast. Please be sure to tune in to the Inside West Point Ideas That Impact podcast next month. Remember, you can find this podcast as well as the other podcasts, journals, and books hosted or published by the West Point Press at westpointpress.com. Until next time.